Shout out. Naomi Sobel. And Pam Rogers. Thank you so much. And of course, this conference would have been possible without the help of all of our volunteers. So shout out to y'all. And again, we also want to give a very special thanks to Sarah Alamasa, the conference coordinator. A big round of applause for her. And of course, our workshop presenters. If there's any presenters, any workshop presenters here, in the little stand up, stand up. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Thank you so much. Y también queremos dar gracias a nuestros intérpretes. We would also like to thank worked all week, really diligently. Oh, and thank you for all of these workers that worked really hard this week. Los apreciamos muchísimo y muchas gracias de nuevo. Keeping our future safe. And now we're going to take a moment and hand the mic over to Veronica.
Good morning, everybody. This morning, I want to give thanks. What? Am I getting this?
Oh no, you're good.
As we're giving thanks this morning, I also just wanted to pop up here and give a quick round of thanks for our MCs, Bobby. Priceless. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we're so happy to be here, and yesterday was the last. The debate was really fun, so thank you all for coming to that. Yeah, we made wonderful friends, and everybody seems so all-unique. All right, now let's get to it. So our next speaker is a nationally recognized expert on social justice philanthropy and the author of Decolonizing Wealth. Now, if you don't know who this is, it's probably going to have a program, but we are so excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Edgar Villanueva. The conference, and everyone has a full heart and a full mind. And I have been following along with Twitter, and it's like you've had a dynamic conference. So again, I want to express my shout out and appreciation to everyone who had a part in making this happen. And thanks to Veronica, who was my coach and had a big part of getting me here today. So thank you. So excited to be here. So, I did write a book called Decolonizing Wealth that comes out October 16th. And today I'm going to share just a little bit of my thinking and stuff, that I put into the book. And we want to figure out how we go on from here to really leave this conference and try to do something different in our lives as we're moving money to our movements. So Philanthropy is the space where I find myself working and where I have been working for the past 14 years. And I have the stars to prove it, if you don't believe me. But I'm going to read something that I wrote. This is sort of how I've been feeling about philanthropy lately. The field of philanthropy is a living anachronism. It is, or we are, like a stodgy relative wearing clothes that will never come back to fashion. It is adamant that it knows best, holding tight the purse strings. It is stubborn. It fails to get with the times, frustrating the younger people. It doesn't care. It is, or we are, like a mansion with neoclassical columns and manicured lawns, staffed with butlers and maids who pass silver trays of tiny tasteless niblets to guests, wearing tailcoats and bustles as a string quartet plays tunes written centuries ago. Picking the blanket, anyone? No one's voice rises above a certain decibel. No one jokes inside the walls of the foundations. No one's words call attention to the ludicrous and unsustainable farce that is the entire scene. It is a period play, a costume drama, a fantasy of entitlement, altruism, and superiority. Far too often, it creates or we create division and suffering rather than progress and healing. It is a sleepwalking sector. White zombies spewing the money of dead white people in the name of charity and benevolence. It is colonization or colonialism in the empires we was closed. It is racism in institutional form. Philanthropy moves at a glacial pace. Epidemics and storms hit, communities go underwater literally and metaphorically, black and brown children get shot dead or lose their youth inside jail cells. Families are separated across continents. Women are abused and beaten and raped. All the Rome burns while we fiddle with yet another survey on our strategies, another study on impact. Other sectors feel the heat of competition, not us. We politely nod at the innovations of the business sector. It takes us half a century to implement even one of them. We indulge those who say that diversity is important by conducting several decades of analysis, hiring consulting groups with absurd price tags. We publish reports, and then we create a task force and debate mightily over what to call it. We don't actually change, not more than superficially. So yes, this is philanthropy. It is the family that embarrasses me, that infuriates me, but it is still my family, my relations, and I believe in redemption. So it's from that place of calling this family to a better self that I wrote the book, Decolonizing Wealth. Because philanthropy, honey, it's time for intervention. So most critiques of philanthropy point an accusing finger to funding priorities, grant-making decision processes, the tax code, payout percentages, all of those things. And as far as I'm concerned, a focus on reforming that stuff is certainly valid, but ultimately about as effective as rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Why is this? Because those are mere symptoms of a virus that has pervaded every aspect, every cell, every interaction. What remains unexamined in those kinds of reforms are the frank conversations about where the wealth came from, why it's held back from public coffers, how it's invested as an endowment, and who is to manage, allocate, and spend it. Think about this collectively, America's foundations have more than $800 billion in assets. $45 trillion with a T is moving through capital markets every year. That's a lot of wealth. And it is wealth that was made on the backs of Native Americans, African Americans, low-wage workers, immigrants, other people of color, following the directives of colonization. So the mantra of colonization, which we'll talk about more, is divide, control, exploit. Our peoples and our lands were exploited over generations, over centuries, and ongoing. My simple argument is this, that what ails philanthropy at its core is colonialism. Almost without exception, funders reinforce the colonial divide of us versus them, haves versus have-nots, and mostly white saviors and white experts versus poor, needy, urban, disadvantaged, marginalized, at-risk people. Take your choice, your pick of euphemisms for people of color. The stats speak for themselves. 92% of foundation CEOs are white. 89% of foundation boards are white. while only 7 to 8% of foundation funding goes specifically to communities of color. Only 7 to 8%. Philanthropy is the savior mentality in institutional form, which instead of helping people, which is its obvious stated mission, actually can further divide and destabilize society. Decolonizing funding processes is key to our healing. We're going to talk about healing today. After years of philanthropy, 14 years, I told you I had the scars to show, I've personally invested more than $130 million. But I have seen past the field's glamorous, altruistic facade into its colonial shadows. The good old boy networks, the white savior complexes, the internalized oppression that exists among the few people of color who gain access. So I had to write this book to call that out. Because we truly need transformation and healing. We need a conversation about race, about our history, about oppression within the walls of philanthropy that we have not had ever before. So a little bit about me. Who's your people? That is the first question in my community that folks ask when they meet a new person. My community is the Lumbee tribe in North Carolina. We say who's your people because it's like when we meet you that we have this enormous family tree in our mind and we need to place you on the appropriate branch or twig or limb. We just sell t-shirts back home in Atlanta and say who's your people, right? So yes, my people are Native American, but I hate to disappoint some of you. I cannot build a canoe from scratch. I cannot catch a deer with my bare hands. Because my identity as a Native is complicated due to the history of colonization in this country. At a certain point in time, I sort of had a rock bottom moment working in this field, this concentrated bubble of wealth and privilege and whiteness, where I was forced to assimilate, to be able to do work in this space. And I physically became ill. Because I was giving up a part of me that was so central to who I was in order to do this work. And so I began a long journey to really revisit who I was, what I believe, what my values were. And I embedded myself in my community for a period of 2 years, where I spent time talking to elders and people that I respect about this work. I began a process of decolonizing my mind and really deeply connecting with my indigenous values. So I'm really want to appreciate those values that were passed down to me, especially from my mom. And especially from the few Native Americans that has worked in this bubble of concentrated wealth and privilege in philanthropy. I know that this sector is inherently connected to business on Wall Street, and that it aims to support the nonprofit industrial complex in order to only nurse the wounds caused by poverty and racism. And I know that philanthropy has a role in contributing to that. But today I want to ask you all a question. Can money actually heal us? Can money be medicine? What do I mean by medicine? In the indigenous worldview, many kinds of things can be medicine. It could be a place, it could be a word, a stone, it could be a word of comfort. It could be having a cup of coffee with a friend that makes you laugh, right? It could be taking a walk outside. Anything that restores balance to your life or makes you just feel kind of normal again, that's medicine. Sometimes medicine is something bad that happens to you. Have you ever looked back at your life and thought, man, that was the worst thing that happened to me, but it's also the best thing that happened to me? Then that's medicine. Anyone can find and use medicine just by allowing your intuition and your feelings to determine that something can serve as medicine. All right? So in my community, the elders say that you don't choose the medicine, that the medicine chooses you. It's taken me a long time to accept that the medicine that chose me is money. I mean, because money, come on, right? Money is corrupt. Money is dirty, even filthy. Money is the root of all evil. Doesn't the Bible say that? Maybe. But what is money? Money is but a way to measure value, a way to facilitate exchange. And what is exchange but a type of relationship between people? Money is simply a stand-in for the sweat we spend on growing food, sewing clothes, assembling electronics, coding apps, creating entertainment, researching innovations. It's just a proxy, right, for the materials we use, the services granted, and the responsibilities shouldered. Materially, money is just a little bit of nickel, zinc, copper, right? It's mostly linen and cotton with some ink on it. It's like Kleenex adorned with dead presidents. Today, money is mostly a series of zeros and ones, bytes, data on screens, imaginary, harmless. And in fact, take it from someone who graduated from seminary, that's me. We can talk about that another time. The Bible does not say that money is the root of all evil. It says that the love of money is the root of all evil. So in other words, when we let money be more important than life, than relationships, than humanity, that is the evil. I'm not saying that there are problems when money is hoarded, controlled, or used to divide people, to oppress and dominate. Clearly that's problematic. But that's not the money's fault. Humans have used money wrongfully. We've made money more important than human life. We've allowed it to divide us. Now that is a sin. We forget that we gave money its meaning and its power. Money can be and should be used as a tool of love to facilitate relationships, to help us thrive, rather than to hurt and to divide us. Now, let me persuade anyone here how broken the economy is, right? Sorry. Make sure you're still there. It has totally more harm than good for all but a tiny percent, right? I can rattle off a list like record levels of inequality, recession, merchant bubbles, unemployment rate, bankruptcy. We all know that something's wrong and that something must change. And more people are calling out capitalism and or neoliberalism for being inherently flawed. And I don't disagree with the novels that they need to be changed and that they're not working for everyone. But sometimes I think the real root of the problem hides behind capitalism. As Malcolm X said, that you can't have capitalism without racism. So what I'm going to say to you is that it's not necessarily about economic models, but it's about white supremacy and colonization. Because you see, when it comes to getting or giving access to money, the stats are in the book, I quoted some of them, but trust me, white men are usually in charge, and everyone else has to do twice or more to get half or less as much. Whether we're talking about philanthropy, which is what I worked in, venture capital, bank loans, even municipal bonds, all these institutions in control of access to money are ivory towers, institutions of racism and division. By design, all these funders exist to reserve the wealth and privilege of a few, to separate them from the rest of us. By design, money is employed in the name of division, in the name of fear and greed. So this is my main argument. In order to heal what hurts us, in order to come back as one human race and restore balance to the land, we need to decolonize wealth. All right, so what does that mean? Picking the title for this book was really hard because it's a whole of a word, like decolonization, right? So first of all, we think what colonization is. Let me talk about that for a minute. Colonization seems really normal nowadays because in the history books we talk about it. And, a lot of those countries that colonize are very proud about colonization. There was a poll in Great Britain recently, I forget the year, but it was like in the last decade, that asked folks there how they felt about colonization. And the majority of folks there felt like, they're very proud of the conquest and the colonization. And they felt like the countries that have been colonized were better off, right? So that's what we're dealing with. Now, that's really strange to me, but understand there's conquering and there's colonization. So conquering is one thing. When you conquer, you go to another place, you take their shit, you kill people to get in your way, you go home with your spoils. But colonization is different. With colonization, you stick around. You occupy the land. You force the existing indigenous people to become you. It's like a zombie invasion. Colonizers insist on taking over the bodies, the minds, and the souls of the colonized. Colonization begins at the conquest, and then there's exploitation motivated by greed and fear, and it's all justified by God-given superiority. Again, under the mantra of divide, conquer, command, and control, and above all, exploit. Make no mistake, colonization is an atrocity. It's a close relative of genocide. Initially, colonization is like a rape and causes the first wave of trauma. Later, when the colonizers set down roots and become settlers, colonization becomes more like a virus, what I call the colonizing virus. And that virus is in every human institution and system, as well as all of us, the collective body. Now, we adopt over time, right? But so do viruses. They adapt, and they change, and they become stronger. And so the adaptations in our bodies, in our collective body, in our culture, do not constitute healing. The virus remains, leading to ongoing acts of control and exploitation. The colonizer virus inside of culture and institutions is especially dangerous. Our education system reflects the colonizer virus. Our agriculture and food system reflects the colonizer virus. So does our foreign policy and our environmental policy. So does the field of design. But where you really see the colonizer virus showing up is in the realm of wealth, finance, investment, and philanthropy. So decolonization is what? Obviously, it's kind of undoing colonization, right? When you take the word decolonization literally, it means that the land that was stolen is returned, the sovereignty of not only the land and its resources, but all of the social structures and traditions or rights are re-granted back to whom it was all stolen from. It means the autonomy of every native person must be reinstated. This is the challenge. When we define decolonization this way, it tends to get stuck, as a political process, right? Because the truth is, there's probably no future that does not include settlers occupying indigenous lands. Today, in the 21st century, our lives are intertwined, our businesses, our families. That's simply the reality of today's world. So this is where I propose that another way to understand decolonization is a process of healing from the trauma, right? Because colonization, it violates us and it leaves us all traumatized. Now, that doesn't affect whether you are a person of color, someone who has suffered from the effects of colonization, or you are the colonizer. We'll talk about that in a minute. What we can focus on with decolonization is stopping the cycles of abuse and healing ourselves in order to expand the possibilities for the future. This means that our interdependence is inescapable. So we might as well acknowledge each other's trauma and engage in the healing process together. Everybody close your eyes for a minute if you promise you won't fall asleep. All right? Just for a second, close your eyes. Now, I want you to imagine that you came, and for some of this is not a stretch of the imagination, but imagine that you came from generations of people who were systematically and repeatedly violated in every possible way. And imagine that all of your family and friends and community regularly experience events like upheaval, violence, rape, brainwashing, homelessness, forced marches, criminalization, death, over hundreds of years. And imagine the trauma of this experience that has been reinforced by government policies, economic systems, and social norms that have systematically denied your people access to safety, mobility, resources, food, education, dignity, and positive reflections of themselves. Repeated and ongoing violation, exploitation, and deprivation have a deep, lasting, traumatic impact, not just at the individual level, but on whole populations, tribes, and nations. All right, open your eyes. So this is what is known as collective trauma, historic trauma, and intergenerational trauma. We need healing. We really need healing. This is the kind of trauma that my people, the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, have experienced and continue to experience. This is the trauma that many of you in the communities you're serving continue to experience. But we're still here, right? You know, resilience is a tricky word that is being used a lot in business and climate change work. But let me tell you, my people, we have a corner on resilience. Our communities have a corner on resilience. And in fact, I argue in the book that we, the resilient, all of us who have been excluded and exploited by today's broken economy, we possess exactly the perspective and the wisdom needed to fix it. I'm not saying there's no place for the 1%, they have their work to do. But sometimes the privilege, it always blinds them to solutions that work for everyone. So for today, they get to take a step back from the decision-making table. But make no mistake, decolonizing our thinking around money and wealth is a process that rolls for everyone involved, whether you're rich or poor, funder or recipient, victim or perpetrator. So why did I write this book? You know, when I started in philanthropy, you know, I had illusions of grandeur that some of you may have, like, oh God, I like to feel on that side, right? You know, where I'm not, you know, manipulating people for money or begging for money and trying to get the resources to sustain the supportive work in my community. That must be really where it's at, right? When I got into the work, I realized it was not all that I thought it would be, and that system and that place was not designed for a person like me, a Native American away from the South, gay. It was not designed for me to be successful. But nevertheless, I found myself in that space, and I watched quietly for a long time and all the dynamics that I saw happening, how people with wealth and power were moving through the world. How people of color who got power and had a seat at the table began to internalize and have abusive leadership practice towards others. A lot of shit was happening. And so I started like this. There's a folk tale about a serpent that was plaguing a village. The serpent had devoured many of the villagers, including children, and everyone lived in fear of its next attack. There was a flute player who was living on the limit. He decided to do something about this. So he packed up his lunch and a bundle of stuff and went and sat on the edge of the village and began to play his flute. Sure enough, as he expected, the music drew the serpent in, and with one bite, the serpent swallowed up the flute player, who was now inside the belly of this serpent. It was dark, scary, but the flute player pulled out his knife, and he cut away a little bit of the serpent's stomach, and he ate it. Bit by bit, he cut away the serpent's flesh from the inside. This went on for some time, until finally the flute player reached the heart of the serpent. When he cut it out, the serpent died, and the flute player called out the serpent and returned to the village, bringing along the serpent's heart so that everyone would know that they no longer had a reason to be afraid. I see this story as a story about grappling with collective trauma. We have to enter into the darkness of it all. It can't be dealt with from the outside. We have to go inside despite our resistance and allow ourselves to feel swallowed up and surrounded by it. It might seem like the pain will never end and that there's no way out of it, but we eventually get to the heart of the matter. The flute player had prepared himself for a prolonged reckoning. You know, some types of grappling, especially for deep wounds, are lifelong projects. If we don't reckon with it, however, if we carry around unresolved grief, pain, we can spend our lives plagued by the serpent. When we finally get to the heart of the matter, we can emerge lighter and ready to build something new. So I decided, you know, I'm inside the belly of this serpent of philanthropy. I got swallowed up. I don't even remember how I got there, but there I was for some reason. And so the work that I was going to try to get out was to start cutting away, little by little. Cutting away the privilege, cutting away the racism, finding ways to disrupt until I eventually got to the heart of the matter. When I realized that the heart of the matter was white supremacy and the colonial dynamics that we talked about, I decided to call that out. It's been scary, okay? When you're willing to take a stand, when you're willing to tell the truth, there's consequences. You know, I've been fished out of 2 jobs with foundations that keep getting hired again, thank God, that have rent to pay in New York City. And by taking this stand, I have been traumatized myself, remembering the stories, talking to a lot of people who are trying to do this work right, and holding all of that and putting that into this interview. There was a point in time where I physically felt sick again, started losing hair and having problems with my immune system. That's how powerful this serpent is. That's the dark powers that we're pushing back against. But what I'm here today is to tell you to keep putting away at this. We are going to see a change, I believe that. So, the book is not all bad and scary and sad, okay? So, yes, we have to talk about pain and talk about the trauma and pain as a part of our healing, right? We have to tell our stories and people need to listen. But I get to the part about healing. And I outlined in the book 7 steps that individuals and institutions that work with money can go through to collectively heal. First, we need to recognize the pain, right, that was caused by the accumulation of wealth in the first place. Again, how it was made on the backs of our ancestors and slaves and low-wage workers and immigrants, most of them people of color. We need to acknowledge that history, although it also was recent as yesterday. When I say colonization, I don't mean 500 years ago, I mean right now. We need to acknowledge that. We need to reopen the wounds and grieve them and apologize for them. We need to listen to each other in order to topple this us versus them paradigm. We need to start walking our talk about diversity and equity. And not just creating a seat at a colonized table, but actually creating a whole new decision-making tables. And finally, philanthropy. We need to put our money where our values are and use money to heal where people are hurting the most and to stop more hurt from happening. This is what I mean when I say that money can be used as medicine to help us heal. So what can you do? Why is this important? This is what you can do. First, we all need to deal with our own shit, right? We must deal ourselves. We have to take responsibility for our part in creating or maintaining the colonial framework, right? Because some of us subscribe to it. It's really scary to think about dismantling a system or space that is helping us at the same time to kind of sustain the work that we're doing, right? It's really scary, but we've got to do it. So we have to identify those colonized aspects of the work that we're doing in our work and take a deep, long look in the mirror. And then we need to begin a healing process. So the couple of things that I call funders to do with the book, I'll just highlight a couple because there's not time and you need to read the book, right? So, I asked funders to step into a place of grief, right? It's a place that many of us know that we have lived in and walked in. But before funders can get to a place where they're thinking of money as medicine, they have to grieve. They have to, soften their self-protective defense mechanisms in order to feel something, right? So you get beyond the denial, getting beyond the numbness, the righteousness, the apathy, and the other obstacles that have been put in place to feel the pain. And the humanity that was previously made invisible must be made visible again. Now, we the colonized, people of color, indigenous people, we have to grieve for the people, for the cultures, and for the land that were forcibly taken from us. We have to mourn the suffering of our ancestors who were cheated, humiliated, and killed. We have to grieve for hundreds of years of being disrespected, displaced, and dispossessed. We have to grieve for our children who embody the trauma of this history and now have the deck stacked against them as they face the future. Those who have embodied and sustained the colonizer virus also have much to grieve for. I work with a number of folks with wealth, white folks with wealth, who are full of fear, anxiety, and mistrust. Being a part of the 1%, it's kind of hard to feel sorry for them, right? But they have their own trauma that they're dealing with, I'm finding. The survival mechanisms they often adopt include staying walled off, physically and emotionally disconnected, and staying well medicated. But white people have to grieve the guilt that accompanies whiteness. You cannot and must not opt out of whiteness. You have to grapple with the messiness of the privilege, and you have to come and collect your people. Now, personally, I know that there are folks in the room who are not ready to consider the suffering of the colonizers and the oppressors, but hear me out for a minute. Remember the day after the election? That was a really shitty day. Really shitty day. I was at Facing Race. I remember boarding the flight from New York to, I believe it was Atlanta, right? Oh my God, it was like we were all going to a funeral. The plane was quiet, and we were all like, what are we going to do? And so it took me a long time to get to a place where I wanted to be around, one, white people, to be honest, and two, especially folks who may have voted for Trump. I was not feeling them. And, my family from North Carolina are relatively conservative, and I needed to create some distance. At a certain point in time, as I was, writing this book, I spent time in my community, right, talking to elders. And I remember talking to an elder of mine, Donna Chavis, and about my struggle. Like, I feel anger, I feel resentment, how do I get beyond this? And she said, Edgar, you have to understand that those people are your relatives. And I said, wait, so someone who voted for Trump who wants me dead, like, I have to think of them as our relative. The indigenous values of all my relations is understanding that we're all connected, that we are all brothers and sisters, and finding a space to find compassion and love for every single person. It didn't happen that day, but I took those words of wisdom with me, and have tried my best to live by that indigenous value of all my relations. Understanding that the settlers and the colonizers are my relatives too. And what that means is that our interdependence is inescapable, right? And if I can get to a place where I'm working on my own trauma, and I can see that whatever trauma, that they might be experiencing, that there's hurt all around, just maybe there's a place where we can create a space and a circle for each other and to think about engaging and healing together. So I've asked not only for funders to grieve, but also to apologize. Around money, apologies are due, right? Apologies are due for where the wealth came from, right? Almost always from theft of land and resources, again, the exploitation of slaves and low-wage workers. Apologies are due for how the wealth was maneuvered out of appropriate taxation, offshore into havens, into foundations, right? Skipping its responsibility in paying for roads, bridges, public schools, care for our elders. Apologies are due because the majority of foundation investments are supporting harmful industries, practices, and regimes. Apologies are due for the greed and pettiness that characterize a lot of our everyday behavior and interactions around money. All of which comes out of the separation paradigm. This myth of scarcity, the idea that we're not together in this thing called life. So apologizing requires this of donors. It requires that people with wealth snap out of their fragility and guilt and just step up. Now, it also requires that we, people of color and indigenous people, dismantle our internalized oppression and admit that we too are infected by the colonizer virus, right? It basically requires that everyone grow up and take responsibility for their actions in order to move forward. In closing, I just want to share one story. So this card here, this is a letter that someone sent to me. And doing this work and having a lot of conversations, I met a woman named Hillary, and a white lady with wealth, who married into wealth and now has a foundation. When I met Hillary, she was not my people, you know what I mean? Like, we were from different worlds, and she had began really doing a lot of work that looked to me at first like cultural appropriation. She showed up at this indigenous meeting with check on Peru, I got some things. I had to check her out. Like, what's going on there? So, but you know what? I opened my heart and mind to Hillary, and after a number of conversations, she shared with me that she did some work looking at where her family was from. And she realized that she did the family ancestry search, whatever, that her family had immigrated from wherever, I think Scotland, and come to North Carolina, to a county called Scotland County. And Scotland County is adjacent to Robinson County, North Carolina, where my people are from. And in doing that work, she realized her family owned slaves, and black and native slaves, and of course she understands that her wealth and privilege now has evolved, you know, on the backs of those ancestors. And so Hillary wrote me a letter of apology. She spent some time grieving and then felt moved to write this letter, and I just want to read what she wrote. This is a portion, it's really detailed, like it's really, but this is a portion. To my indigenous relatives and relatives of color, I apologize for my ignorance of the harm that came to you and the horrors you survived through many generations. I apologize for my unconscious racism and white supremacy and the pain that may have caused you. I apologize for the silent ways I gave my own comfort priority over your existence as a sovereign human being. When I dishonored you, I dishonored my own humanity and the humanity of all of our children. I am sorry, I love you, please forgive me. Y'all, I was moved when I got this. I have never been apologized to for the you know, for all the things, right? And then finally, she wrote to her European descendants and relatives. She apologized for all the times I have judged you, instead of allowing myself to feel the grief of our collective spiritual impoverishment and cultural amnesia. I apologize for seeing you as a monster of oppression instead of a child of creation. I apologize for disassociating you from you and denying that we are all related. When I judged you, I judged my own ancestors, my children, and myself. I am sorry, I love you, please forgive me. So what I'm asking as I close here, for us to imagine what's possible. We're so polarized in this moment, right? The haves and the have-nots. You all as resource mobilizers are, you know, I get that there's a game that has been set up, there's money, and there's money that needs to be raised to make this work possible. There's a tension that we face. But we have got to find a way to move beyond and reimagine how resources and the money can be mobilized for our movements. So I just ask you to ask yourself, what if, we're closing, what if money can be used as medicine? What if funders actually could help be a partner in restoring a perfect world? What if money could be used to facilitate healing instead of being the thing that divides us? What if we could decolonize wealth and use wealth to facilitate healing and not cause further harm? What if we could decolonize wealth? Thank you very much. For audience questions, is that okay? All right, so if you have a question, please raise your hand. Give them that. We'll come through. Okay.
I just want to know the name of your book.
Oh, sorry. So the name of the book is Decolonizing Wealth. If you go to decolonizingwealth.com, please go there, sign up for the newsletter. We have a lot of resources. The actual book comes out October 16. You can pre-order. All the events and things happening around the book. And I just want to say that all the proceeds from this book are going to support Native Youth Organizing. So this is not about generating money for the movement.
Hi. I have a question around some of the conversations that you've been having with others on decolonization. Have any of those conversations talked about reparations, what that would look like? Is that something that has been explored within the community?
Yes. So yeah, I talk about reparations in the book, and there's been some policies that have not been successful that have been brought about, legislation, and that has not been something that's landed Henry has been excited about funding. I think if we can talk about reparations from a different framework, we might find some leeway. Sorry to go back lifting up examples in other countries. This is my approach. And you know, this is not how I feel all the time, right? But sometimes we have to vent and get anger out or frustration in our safe spaces, and then when we enter these spaces, you know, approach it a little bit differently. I have found that if we come in not angry, not accusing, not pointing fingers, but we come in a place where we're meeting folks in the middle, acknowledging their willingness to have this type of conversation. I usually begin every conversation with a wealthy white person that wants to talk about race with, I'm not here to judge you. I want to meet you where you are. I want to listen. And I find that I'm getting, you know, a lot further along to begin having conversations. Can't begin with reparation often because they're like, you know, that for some reason has a narrative of like, I'm taking back something, right? Yes, we're taking back, right? But we want them to, it's taking back this also, we want them to willingly give. We want them to willingly acknowledge where this all came from, and then therefore be compelled to, you know, redistribute those resources. You know, that's just the right thing to do. So we can talk more about that later, but yeah, there's a lot of
All right, any other questions? This side? This side? Okay.
So how do we push funders to have them as their wife? Like, you know, I've been fundraising for a long time, and it's just, I'm tired, I'm angry, you know. And I feel like as nonprofits, how do we hold funders accountable? Because they need to be asked.
right. That was like 3 or 4 really good questions. No, I get it. I mean, I've been doing this, you know, India 101 for a long time, and I'm tired. I get it. So one, for whatever reason, this book is really creating. I would say creating because all of us have been doing this work, right? But there is a moment happening right now, I believe. I could not have written this book and talked this way 5 years ago, right? So I am explicitly calling out white supremacy and those dynamics and how they show up in funding processes. And I'm getting invited to speak at every philanthropy conference and to the boardrooms of foundations with some very wealthy people that you would never imagine in a million years would want to talk about this. So there's something happening, right? So if this book and the tools from this book can be helpful, one, every good funder in this country needs to buy this book to support, you know, to read it, to grapple with the concepts in this book. So there is work happening, I think, in that space on its own. Secondly, take care of yourself, right? And I know that this conference has a track around sort of self-sustainability, and especially those of us who are doing this work, we think we don't have time to rest. Heck, people are dying, we got work to do, right? And I always thought that self-care was like a food thing or whatever, right? But y'all, it's really real, and it is a part of, you know, self-care is a part of really becoming, you know, free. So we got to find ways when you do get tired, tap out for a minute, you know, come to spaces like this, recharge, and then, you know, until you get the strength to like keep moving. And then, you know, I think in terms of the question around getting white folks to collect their people, there are a lot of great white allies who are doing this work. I have paired up with some, like the woman who wrote me this letter, right? Because she can get into space that I still can't get in. She brings me with her. I bring her with me when I'm having some of these conversations. So it's not just, you know, Edgar here with this radical idea of decolonization and reparations, but also like this is actually their examples of white folks who have done their work, right, and can testify to their own liberation and freedom in doing that, right, and not understand, and also, you know, reminding everyone that it is a process, right. We don't follow the steps and then we're like decolonized. We are swimming in this, and so it is a process of continued work on ourselves as people of color, and also work that white people have to do. So if you can find spaces where you're doing that in partnership with at least one white ally, that might be helpful and supportive. You have a question?
Thanks for coming and being here in this conference. It's really great to hear you. I wanted to know if you could go deeper with what you think program officers could do, what trustees can do, and what EDs can do of foundations.
Yes.
Thanks.
So for whatever reason, people who work at the foundation have a very limited perspective on what they can do because it's like, well, the board has all this power, my CEO, I can only do. And I always push back, I'm like, if you are the receptionist in a foundation, you have power and there are things that you can do to facilitate racial justice, right? Like, you might be the point of entry of which calls get through and which calls, right? So I'm asking people to examine their work. One, again, to do that personal work, right? So a lot of the coaching I'm doing with funders, they begin to like, do you understand U.S. history, right? Like, that's how basic we have to begin with people. So that's do that personal work, regardless of who you are. Now, at different levels, I think, you know, there you have to examine what you have control over. So one project kind of thing I'm working on now is actually looking at the flow of funding, like from the time someone has a meeting with a program officer to the time, you know, the check is delivered and site visits. All throughout that process, it's just all problematic, like white dominant culture behavior, right? So can we begin to unpack that? So whether you are, you know, at a board level, right, often you need to create proximity to communities, right? You need to really sit and listen. I call it listening in color, where you are actually getting out of the ivory tower and getting into communities of color and really sitting and listening and not talking, right? So there's so many, Margie, so it's hard to answer really quickly. I think what I'm trying to do with this book, I do have some tangible examples, but it's really more around the framework that I'm pushing, and the work to come is the work that a lot of people have been doing, you know, racial equity consultants working in philanthropy. And it's, what I will say, one last thing about that, I think it's easier sometimes for funders to write a check, right, to say, oh yeah, I want to fund equity and racial justice, or, you know, even, oh, I should fund, you know, a group, an organization led by people of color, so I'm going to write that check, and then we did it, and we move on. Where I am not letting funders drop the hook is around that internal culture, and like where that power is really sitting, and who has, you know, who has a say-so around those resources. What do boards look like? What does the leadership of foundations look like? So, but beyond diversity, how are we finding ways through our grant making to put power back in communities and share that power with folks?
Thank you.
All right, we have time for one more question.
Hi, my name is Russell, and I work with UFU 100. And I just want to acknowledge all of the Black people and people of color that apology statement might have been triggering or have made uncomfortable. I'm one of them who, like, as a young Black person organizing with Black people, it's really hard to hold the accountability of the ways in which anti-Blackness has like designed this country, and to hear white folks take up space in spaces of color, and particularly Black spaces, that feel rooted in white guilt, but rather than taking action to undo specifically anti-Blackness, which is much different than white supremacy. And even like the amount of space that gets taken up when we don't see active solidarity happen. Like earlier, a couple of days ago, it was introduced like on this land, indigenous folks have been oppressed and assaulted and harmed in major ways. It was left out that the like 500 years of slavery that also happened on this very land that we sit on. And so we find, as Black people, we find in a lot of spaces, when there are people of color efforts, we would like to get to a point where it's like, we're all in this together, and we're all brothers and sisters, and even that leaves out siblings and non-conforming folks. We would like to get to that point, but how do you see, even in collaboration efforts for fundraising, how do you see folks that hold access, power, and privilege actively support marginalized identities, and so that the solidarity isn't these words that end up taking up space and making people uncomfortable, but actively participating in redesigning what like solidarity looks like so that it's actually impacting the identities that are most marginalized.
Awesome comment and question. A couple of just initial thoughts about that. One is I acknowledge in the book and in all of my conversation with folks, anti-Black racism And I know that a lot of spaces where I'm invited to speak is because I'm seen as a Native American who might be like peaceful, and there's like, I may, you know, all the stereotypes, right? Like, oh, they have some like indigenous magical powers that are gonna come here and share. And had I been a black man writing this book, I may not be getting the same type of access or reception. So I name that and call that out all the time. And in the book, I did my best to not, you know, I interviewed tried to get the perspective of several different, you know, folks with different race and ethnic backgrounds, as well as across the gender spectrum, to weave those stories into my story in the book, so that it's not just an indigenous perspective on what's happening around white supremacy and the organizations that move and control money. So I try to work with that privilege a little bit when I get invited in, and then they're thinking, oh, we're going to tell us some Indian story, and I do, and then I immediately call out, you know, anti-black racism in a lot of these races. So that's one, and then I think, and I hear you about sort of white people taking up space with the grieving and apology process. And what I say there in the book is that I say to them that, because I did write this book thinking of like white people in mind, although I think I hope that it's a book that people of color can resonate with and that folks can use in their work. But I do say that we don't have to accept your apology. We have the right to be mad. And but you still need to do it, right? And then I do, there are other phases of the process that I move into that are more focused on action and reparations, and how you're actually, after you grieve, acknowledge and grieve and apologize and all that personal work that you need to do, how you begin, you know, how that begins showing up in your actual actions. And so I think, you know, there are a number of funders that I can name examples where I think are doing a good job with that, but there's a lot of work to be done. And I'm very open to talking more with you and getting your insights and how I can be more helpful in the spaces that I'm getting into.
All right, thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. We want to thank everybody. We want to thank Edgar Villanueva. And remember, the name of his book is Decolonizing Wealth. If you don't know who the work that he's doing, Google it. You'll find amazing information. And also, we want to thank yourselves. We want to thank everybody that has attended. These are very important conversations that we have attended here this weekend. So I encourage afterwards to look at the person next to you, hug them, just take care of each other, because it's an ongoing fight. And again, thank you everybody for coming. Yes, and we will see you at the 2020 Money for Our Movement Conference. We are so happy to be here. Thank you to all the organizers that only got. Thank you so much for having us. And volunteers, all the people in the workshop, thank you so much. And don't forget, fill out your evaluations before you leave. Very important. Safe travels, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
And have a picture?
Sure.
Okay, so gracias por esta conferencia, por todos los esfuerzos para organizar y por concurrir en un espacio a gente que tiene tantos recursos, que tiene tanto valor. Unas últimas palabras para nuestro canal comunitario de cierre de esta conferencia. Muy rapidito, estamos con Fabi, Babelito y Verónica. Entonces, si pudieran, muy rapidito, su nombre, la organización y unas últimas palabras de esta conferencia.
Sí, yo me llamo Verónica García, trabajo con la organización GIFT, the Grassroots Institute for Fundraising Training, y pues yo le digo a todos que la lucha sigue, siempre sigue, pero también el amor.
Gracias.
Yo soy Babelito de Latinos Who Lunch. Y también igual la resistencia lleva más de 500 años, no se termina. Y estamos muy agradecidos con la conferencia con Gift, con Vero, por tenernos. Cada quien aporta su granito de arena y ahora nos tocó entretener un poco, así que muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Sí, mi nombre es Fabi Fab del podcast Latinos Who Lunch y le quiero dar muchas gracias a Verónica por incluirnos en esta conferencia. Aprendimos mucho, conocimos mucha gente y sentimos el amor, gracias.
Gracias a los tres por todo el esfuerzo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and also I want to say bye and remember that all the videos that we capture in this conference are in JM Pro, so you can share. So we'll also glad you to share with Gift. Okay, so we're closing this transmission. Thank you very much. Bye. Adiós, adiós, adiós.
Sí, bye, hasta luego.
Adiós.
Cuídense todos.
Hombre, encantado,
Gracias.
encantado. Ya nos estamos viendo. No, ustedes, gracias por todo, tremenda. Cuídense.